one.
And it was really the word mum that gave it away for me.
Me too. Mum was it.
You do know that mum is not spelled M-O-M, it's spelled M-U-M.
Yes.
Yep.
I was like,
I watch a lot of Bluey.
I was like, that was the giveaway.
When I watch British TV with my wife, I often have to translate for her, so it's okay.
Yeah. He's a friend of the friendless. He's the hope to the hopeless. The illest conductor, the best orchestrator, by the far he's the dopest. Created the moon, created the sun by using his vocals. Whenever a problem arises, solved, he's already spoken. Created the light and saw that it was all good. Created the land and sea, it was all good. Created the plants and trees and it was all good. See, in the air or in the sea, it's all good. That's what it be. Created the day and night and it was all good. Created the animals and they are all good. Created you and me and we are.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back to the Humble Heartbeat Speaks and for Uncharted Conversations. Today we have Mark Astor with us. He is our guest from Boca Raton, Florida. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, how are you? So lovely to see you again.
Doing great. Now, last week I was on Mark's podcast and I was so excited to have more conversation with him. We invited him to our podcast. So let's can you give us a little background of what you do and the impact that you've made in the world?
So I am the co-founder of a law firm. We're based here in Boca Raton, which is Palm Beach County, Florida. So it's southeastern Florida. We also have an office in Orlando and Jacksonville and one in Boston. And the mission of the firm is to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So the team and I speak to families from all over the country. It's usually mums and dads that call us. And it's because there's somebody in the family, usually an adult child, with a long history of drug use and mental illness and treatment that doesn't work if they'll even go to treatment. They're probably med non-compliant. They may well have been a guest of the state through either the criminal or the mental health system, and maybe even an overdose. And the family calls us and says, we're done, we can't take it anymore. We hear you might be able to help. And the answer is yes, we can, usually. And that's what we do. We help the family. We save the family. That's the word I was looking for. That's what we do. We save the family by saving their loved one, because it's a family disease and it basically destroys the entire family unit. Yes,
it's generational too. A lot of times where it doesn't matter if there's dysfunction for one, there's dysfunction for everyone. And it's just where you fit in.
Yeah, that's such an important point that you make. And I know that you'd mentioned that to me, I think, when you did my podcast. And see, during the week, actually, I got an article that came across my desk that talked exactly about that. And I put out a video about the genetic, component to behavioral health. And there are certain, mental health issues where there's something like a 75% chance that it will get passed down to either through parents or grandparents. So there's a strong genetic component to what we see. And I think we're just getting to the tip of the iceberg on that.
Yes, but equally, it's no different than having the cancer gene or the addiction gene or whatever it is in your family. So, one of the things that I'm just using from my experience in, one of the things that we talked about with my sister when she was going through addictive, she was going through pain management, she was going through the legal channels, but then she would also use recreational drugs as well. And when they make the decision to not be compliant and do those things, how disruptive it is to the entire family. And not just disruptive, but you lose, she's an adult. She has to make her own decisions, right? So her decisions didn't align with what our family in the treatment wanted it to be. So can you talk a little bit about the struggle with that with most families?
Yeah, and that is something we see a lot of, right? Where the family is trying to rationalize this behavior, right? The family is in the middle of really utter chaos and have usually been in the middle of the chaos for several years. And one of the challenges is getting both of the parents, if both the parents are around, on the same page. And sometimes what happens is you've got one parent that says, well, we need to sort of, for lack of a better word, punish them for their behavior, for their choices, and we want them out of the house. We're not going to give them financial support. And the other parent says, well, I don't see how that helps. So we need to continue to financially support this person, because otherwise they'll be on the streets. And my response to that is that neither one of those are really the right option. Neither one of them gets them to where they need to be, which is in treatment. And so then the issue is, well, why can they not make the decision to go to treatment or be med compliant? Or why do they go in and out of treatment multiple times? And the simple reason is what I tell families is it's as if their brain had been hijacked or their brain had been kidnapped, right? It looks like your loved one, it sounds like your loved one, but they have a disease, and they are, for the most part, not capable of making the decision to save themselves. They cannot make the decision to go into treatment. They cannot make the decision to stay long enough in treatment, and they cannot make the decision to continue to take their medications. That is the very nature of what we deal with. And once you accept that, then you can talk about what options are available so that somebody or someone can start to make the decision and the commitment to put this person into treatment and keep them there long enough.
Mm-hmm. And what is the legal recourse? What if they get there and they decide that they don't want to stay? I mean, like, how do you make them stay?
Yeah. So, people always say to me, well, you're getting calls from all over the country, but you're only in Florida. I mean, I'm barred in Massachusetts too, but the bulk of our work is done here in Florida. And I tell families there's two very good reasons to come to Florida. Number one, we have really excellent treatment here in Florida. Now, I will tell you, I can use 3 or 4 fingers to name facilities that I would send my own family member to, which means I'm only going to send your loved one to those 3 or 4 facilities too. And sometimes it may be a budgetary issue or it may be health insurance, but all 4 of those facilities, I think, will do a fine job. So coming to Florida, because we have good treatment. The other thing is we have some really great laws down here that allow us to give a family varying degrees of control of what is usually an out of control situation. And that can vary. Anything from as simple as getting a judge to give me, a sort of 72-hour temporary order, which would authorize the police to go and get this person and place them in some type of, receiving facility where they can be assessed and stabilized. We can extend that so that there's 90, now we can put them into residential treatment for 3 months. Or maybe we need that, plus we want access to their medical records. We want to control their finances. We want to restrict their ability to travel. We want to decide who they live with, where they spend time. We want to make sure they take their medications. I mean, we could even take away a driver's license and a right to vote. I mean, again, it really depends on how much control the family wants and what relief. And so there's basically 3 statutes that we're operating under. And depending on the case, sometimes it can be all 3 at the same time, which means 3 courtrooms and 3 judges. And occasionally people get sucked into the criminal justice system here, right? They make silly decisions. They get arrested. So, fortunately, I was a prosecutor for many years. I have a background in doing criminal defense, and I understand how, our civil world interacts with the criminal world, which is important because the goal is to never allow somebody to get sucked into either the criminal justice system or the mental health system, because those are both entities and arms of the state. And in my experience, the state does not do a good job of taking care of people who have behavioral health issues. And we always want that authority to remain with the family. So it's about getting them that authority and empowering the family and making the decision that their loved one can't make.
Yes. I have been in situations where people have asked for resources, to help an adult child who is not making good decisions, but their consequences have caught up with them. And now they're in a legal pickle. And the family doesn't want to lose everything, but they also don't want their loved one, to be in the pit and not get any kind of legal assistance and mental assistance, because it does require mental assistance. And that's where I really want to talk about breaking the stigma, because before it gets to all of that, it still comes with being addictive behavior and consequences, right? They're still your loved one. They're still making choices that you don't agree with. They're still making financial decisions. They're driving cars. They're doing other things that could, really harm other people. So getting your loved one out of that situation is crucial. And time is of the essence, because it only takes one pill, one drug, and the consequences can be very, very great, right? And tomorrow is not promised. And we know that. We know that tomorrow is not promised. So time is of the essence. And I know that you get a lot of phone calls through the night going, I'm in crisis, I need help, all those kinds of situations. So talk to me just a little bit about how that happens and how quickly you can respond to get that assistance.
Okay, so typically a family will call us, and I'm very blessed, Keisha, because we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last month.
Congratulations!
Congrats!
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a grind. The first 7 years, it was just me and my wife doing everything: the sales, the marketing, meeting with clients, drafting pleadings, running to court. I mean, we were driving 25,000 miles a year each. Fortunately now, that's what it takes, right? Yeah. Fortunately now we have a staff. I think there's 16 of us now. And, even on the weekends, the phone is answered by a receptionist, and I have an intake department. And the job of the intake department is to really triage the case and really find out about what's been going on with the family. How long has it been going on? What evidence do we have? Because as lawyers, we still have to make sure that we have enough sufficient evidence. Mm-hmm. And, what's the family tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Why hasn't it worked? Things of that nature. And I think once we figure out what's really going on here, and also what are the goals of the family, then we can talk about what options are available or may not be available. And sometimes that might include legal action, but it might also include non-legal action. I'm a big fan of interventions when they're done right by somebody who's actually qualified to do an intervention, right? If it's somebody who did an 8-hour course online and calls themselves an interventionist, I don't consider that qualified. I mean, that'd be like saying, I took a couple of law classes and I'm a lawyer now. That's silly, right? So I only work with people who are highly qualified. And sometimes an intervention is a great way to get somebody into treatment, and then I can come along and keep them there. So it's about, getting all of the history, what have we tried, and all of that stuff, and then saying, okay, here's what I think is an appropriate response. Here's an option. Do you want to talk about what that looks like in terms of what, how we would file, when we would file, what hearings are needed, who's going to have to testify, things of that nature. We can lay out the whole plan. But, Keisha, the one thing, and I tell every family this, the one thing that is very predictable about a behavioral health case is that it's completely unpredictable, right? 1 minute someone's in treatment and the next thing they've walked. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Or maybe somebody's in treatment and they have a complete psychotic break, and now they need a higher level of care. And at that point, the facility is going to pick up the phone, call 911, and basically allow the state to step in on a temporary basis, because that's the fastest way. Yep. Yeah, it's the fastest way to get somebody some immediate assistance, as long as we don't leave them there. So like I said, things can get very unpredictable. And 1 minute someone's happy to be in treatment, and then the next thing you know, they're having to go into therapy sessions and really address what's the trauma that they've suffered, and they leave because they just can't. They're just not ready to have that that confrontational conversation. So I mean, the work.
I've experienced that in my own family, and I've experienced that with other people that I know well enough that they started treatment. They got there, they didn't like the rules, they didn't like the control, and they were adults. And, then they imploded, which makes, the psychotic goes worse and the things happen. And then, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And, no one can be prepared for that. And, and I say that because I've walked in those shoes. I literally have been on that path. I have walked in those shoes and been in those situations. And it's brutally painful from just being a caregiver, being somebody who wants to love and support their loved one, but it's difficult and hard decisions because it always comes back to you. Like, you did this to me. No, you did that to yourself. I'm just somebody who's trying to get you help. And so I've been on both sides of that coin, and it's difficult. And I've had the backlash from the rest of my family who didn't think it was the right choice. So I get it. I definitely get it.
Yeah, it's amazingly rewarding work, but it can be very frustrating. And what I mean by that is, look, recovery is a journey. It's not necessarily a destination, right? And what I mean by that is that it takes time to get somebody into recovery, but it also takes work for them to be able to maintain recovery. And I tell families, look, this is not a 30-day, fix it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. Recovery is typically a year-long journey, right? Not that you have to hire me for a year, but we're typically on a case usually 3 to 6 months. And I think when they start to understand that and they realize it's not a quick fix because the person has a disease and it's going to take time to get that under control, then they can start to understand like how this all works. And so it's about how, part of the sort of triaging process is having an honest conversation with them and explaining what it looks like, because there's nothing more uncomfortable or even frightening than not knowing what's happening. Like what is it? What is it like? What does it look like when we go into court? Like, how big is the courtroom? Who's the judge? Right? What does treatment look like? And so, we try to do the best we can to lay everything out and prepare people. But sometimes, you come across a bridge that you didn't expect to have to cross, and that's what's the word I'm looking for? That's the surprise that you weren't expecting. How's that? And you have to be able to deal with it, which is why I don't do any other kind of law. I mean, I don't handle car accidents and divorces and, all that other stuff. I have colleagues that do, and good luck to them. And, when I have somebody calls me about a car accident or a divorce, I send them over there because it's not what I do. And so
stay in your lane.
Well, I stay in my lane because I'm not looking to be a jack of all trades. I'm looking to do this one thing and try and do it better than anybody else.
Yes.
Right?
And we appreciate that because we are in the trauma recovery addiction lane as well, and advocating, because we want change and we want it to be a healthy change, and we no longer want it to be a stigma. We want it to be something that we can openly talk about and get people help and assistance. And that's important to us. Fentanyl specifically has just been an epidemic, especially in Florida. Here, now that I'm in Houston, it is, tremendously a big pocket drug destination as well. And every day it's making the news for seizure and recovery. So, we talk about statistics all the time. Generally, most of the people that you're dealing with, your clientele, are they mostly men or women?
Well, I mean, so the client is typically the family.
Okay.
And it's usually the parents, usually. But actually, it's interesting. I just took on a case last week where the parents are divorced, and one of the parents said, I don't want to be in a position where I have to testify against my child. Mm-hmm. And we had an aunt who was willing to step up, and she's the client and the petitioner.
To get it done. Yeah. It's so scary. I feel I commend the people because it is so difficult to be the one that has to be the decision maker, right?
Yeah, it is.
The decision maker is such a hard place to be. And even just being outspoken, because you get the backlash from everyone. And Christy knows I've been raked over the coals. And whether it was in social media, whether it was in my documentary, whether it was testifying in front of the insurance commission, all of the things that I have done, I have been raked over the coals for standing up and having a voice.
What is that? Can I ask a question? I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you say you've been raked over the coals, what do you mean by that?
Just the backlash, backlash for being the advocate for trying to save somebody. And a lot of times people, they don't want you to know their secrets, right? They don't want to know your family name, your generational curse, your all the things. And sometimes it's how they want to look to other people. In fact, what they should be saying is clean up the dysfunction, but not everybody understands its dysfunction. That's just how they live, and they're a product of their environment. And they don't know until they know better. And when they know better, you do better.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, a lot of the work that we do is confidential anyway. So it's not, these filings are not necessarily accessible to the whole world. It's not like a criminal case where anybody can go look at the pleadings or anybody can walk into the court file. So there is that, but people don't like to have their dirty laundry aired.
Yes.
Very true.
Right. And I get that. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm being texted on a case.
You're okay, man.
It's okay.
You're working. Yeah, you're fine, man.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So there was a time when I tried desperately not to work on the weekends, but I don't do well shutting down. And what I realized was, people that have behavioral health issues don't work on a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday basis.
Yeah, I agree.
Or 7. Mm-hmm. And so what I decided was because this work in many, many ways saved me, that I don't want to shut it down. So I typically work late. I worked most of yesterday, and I give most of the staff the weekend off. So I have a small team that, I have a paralegal that's sort of on standby. So if a case comes in,
she's ready to go. Yeah.
She's ready to go. So she was texting me about this one family I've been speaking to since I think about 8 o'clock last night. His little boy has been sucked into Florida's mental health system, and now they don't want to let him go. So that's another part of what I do. And I do that work because 11 months after I opened up my office, I lost my dad. And 2 days after I buried him, I had a family member that got sucked into Florida's mental health system. And then during COVID, a lot of other people's families started getting sucked into Florida's mental health system because they couldn't get in to see their doctors or their right. clinicians or their therapists. And people, and it was there was sort of a general understanding that once you got into Florida's mental health system, it was near impossible to get out. And I, having had it happen to me, I made it a bit of a mission of mine to prove that was not the case and that you can fight and you can win. So about 65% of my practice is putting people into treatment. And the other 35% is getting people who should not be in the mental health system here in Florida and getting them out. So, but every once in a while you get somebody who really needs help. And so we want them out of the system, but we want to make sure the family can make the decisions that needed to be made to save this person. Because if you get sucked into Florida's mental health system enough times, eventually they will keep you. And, and it's not unlike the criminal system, because here in Florida, the mandate, and I'm willing to bet it's probably the same in Texas, the mandate in our criminal justice system is to punish first and rehabilitate second. And as long as I've been around, which is 32 years, that has been the mandate. Punish first, rehabilitate second. And if you just keep coming back, they will eventually just lock you up for as long as they can. And they'll do it. They will. So we want to make sure that we get somebody the appropriate care if we can.
Yeah. What about legislation, Mark? We talked about this before. In Florida, we have Gage's Law. And I know that you've asked before, and we have talked about how much money needs to be pushed into the system to get these people some more help and some services, right?
Yeah, and I think I took a look at that because I think what I didn't remember the name of it. And
Gage's Law. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that had to do with the whole fentanyl testing, right? When somebody goes into the hospital to test them for fentanyl poisoning. It's funny, I'd never heard anybody use the name, so I learned something from you. So thank
Well,
you.
here's what's important is saying their name, your loved one's name. And it has been a movement. And Friday was Black Balloon Day, which is in recognition to the person that you lost. And the most valuable thing you can do for the person who's been lost is say their name. And so last year in Pensacola, we went on a walk that was in recognition to people who have intentionally or unintentionally overdosed and passed away from fentanyl poisoning. And so it was a walk called Say My Name. And so as we, everybody in the community came, and then, each person that was represented by their family would walk up and say their name. And such a powerful walk. And then also just having pictures of people who were represented that nobody knew their name. And so it is quite an awakening when you do say their name. And so anyone who can make the effort to sit and fight legislation in honor of their loved one, I really highly, it's very important.
Yeah, I get, a lot of calls from people who have been unfairly, sucked into the mental health system. Now, and a lot of time they'll call and say, well, what can we do to change, the law? And I'm like, you got to reach out to your local state legislature and say, listen, there's a problem with this. You need to change it. Now, here in Florida, last year, they made a couple of changes to how our behavioral health laws, one of which was that Baker Act, I think I mentioned, which is our state statute for basically taking somebody. And every state has a version of the Baker Act. It was named after somebody whose last name was Baker.
Baker. Mm-hmm.
And, they made these changes, and local CBS came down here. They wanted to interview me, and they said, what do you think about it? I said, I think they wasted their time, because there was only a couple of things that really needed to be fixed, and they totally ignore them. I said, I don't know who they spoke to, but why didn't they call somebody like me who works in the behavioral health space, who operates under that statute? And I would have said to them, these are the changes you need to make. And they're very simple, But, when you're dealing with the legislature, I mean, I don't always know where they come from. So who knows what happened? But I said, I can't change anything. And after the fact, I can't unring the bell either. While it's all going on, that's the time to call me. That's the time to fight. Right? That's the time to enforce rights. And people say, oh, I want my rights. Okay. Rights are only as good as their enforceability. What I mean is, if you want your rights, then you have to be willing to go to court and complain to a judge, my rights, whether it was constitutional or statutory, were violated. But there's a time and a place, because once the harm passes, as a general rule, nobody cares if your rights were violated. It's all over. The milk has already been spilt. That train left the station. And I feel terrible because people call me and say, well, I want to sue. But when it comes to the state, you can't sue them. They have immunity. You're not getting any money out of this. I wish I could tell you otherwise, because I would have been retired years ago. Right? And I feel terrible. And I'm like, well, if you want this not to happen to somebody else, and I appreciate that you do, then you got to reach out to your local legislature and get them to change the law and let them send the governor something to sign. But until that happens, I'm going to be here fighting the good fight and doing my little part to, make a difference. But there's only so much we can do. And I have to operate within the confines of the laws that we operate under.
Sure. And it's challenging for sure. Most of the people, like last year when President Trump signed the law and made the fentanyl awareness, but the thing is, it was only for a blip of a minute. It didn't stop anything that was happening, because they're still seizing drugs every day. It's still, and the amounts of money that it's taking to stop it is so much greater than the loss of saving people, right? Because we don't have the treatment centers available. We don't have, what happened to all the money that they were supposed to put towards saving people and all of the drug, it's a vicious cycle. It is such and I know I get really worked up about it.
No, it's a passion.
The opioid, season moved from opiates to fentanyl and meth and all the other things. And, it's global. It's global and international. And it's the trafficking, the people, all of the things that they're doing is just absolutely crazy. But here's what I want to focus on. Those things are out of my control, but what I can control is education and resources and advocacy and being the change that I want to see in the world, right? I have had things happen to me that were unfairly, unjust, and unpredictable, but it happened. And that's just the cards I was dealt. But I am not going to let my family name go down without a fight. You know, I am going to make the change and do the things that I can within my power with the documentary, with the books, with the education, with the Narcan, with all of the things that we can do and make change and just educate people, right? Education is very important. You know, teaching young children, you know, having your parents look at your text to see what kind of emojis that you're using, because those emojis tell a story of drug, you know, exchanging drugs and getting drugs, and they tell a story. But if you don't know what they are, how can you help your child, right? There's so many things for awareness that you have to start small and get bigger and bigger and bigger and take bigger bites out of to help people. And that's where I think we need to do more of. Man, my dog.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I got 3 dogs and 3 cats in the house. So I'm amazed they're as quiet as they are.
She's about to jump up here on my chair.
So they recharge. Yeah, you know, you make such a good point, Keisha. And I tell families, and they say, well, what can we do? And I say, well, I think that you should be a very nosy parent and make a point of finding out what's going on with your child. And I use the word child generically. I'm, you know, because I'm 59, and to my mother, I'm still her little boy, and I'm sure I always will be. And I see how my wife is with with my stepchildren, and they're adults. I think it starts with being a little bit nosy and finding out what's going on. And the other thing is that as parents, especially mums just know when something is not right.
Your radar goes off.
They can instinctively feel it. And I would say to the mums out there, do not ignore that sign. You may not know what it is, but something subconsciously is telling you that something's off with this person. Pay close attention to that. Pay very close attention, because you're noticing something, and maybe it's even a collection of things that just seem to be different about this person. And so that's the time to start paying attention.
Yeah, your instincts really know.
Yeah,
I believe that.
Really know.
I think they really do know. So, you know, tell me what the highlight of your year is going to be with the impact that you're making in your world.
Yeah, I mean, last year was really a breakout year. I mean, you know, the business has grown steadily every year. But last year we had our biggest jump. So that means we helped more people than ever. And our goal this year is to help more people than ever. And we're bringing in all kinds of new staff. You know, my wife and I believe that it's important to invest in the business. So, you know, we pay ourselves what we need to live, and everything else goes back into the business. Because, you know, I'm not just responsible for putting food on my own plate, but for my 16 staff too, because they rely on us as well. And they give us everything they have. So I think for this year, it's about building the team so we can provide a better level of experience. I will tell you, I'm working on 3 books. So
we love to hear that.
Yeah. So, I just got done writing a book about the Marchman Act. So the Marchman Act is a statute that's unique to Florida, and it is a statute that allows us to put people into treatment where there's a primary substance use for periods of up to 90 days at a time, in which we can repeat. And so with the help of a colleague, we wrote a book, but we're putting in a lot of video content. So there's 9 chapters, and I've recorded the first 6. So there's probably 3 or 4 minutes of video at the beginning of each chapter where I'm talking about, just explaining some of the components to what we do and the psychological things that we've noticed over the years. So we're working on that. And I'm going to do 2 more, one about guardianship and one about Baker Act. I'm really a big believer that it's so important to give people access to the information they need.
Yes.
I mean, I normally record at least 1 or 2 videos every day. When we get done, I'm going to record 2 and I'm going to put them out there. So I've got about 850 videos, I think, on YouTube. And it's all based on real cases. And I do that because, you know, I get people call me, say, I went to ChatGPT and I went to Google. Okay, neither ChatGPT or Google has handled nearly as many behavioral health cases as I have.
Right.
So, well, I appreciate you want the information, but that's probably not the place to go. And I can tell you, ChatGPT literally will make stuff up if it doesn't know the answer. And I've seen that because there's a couple of lawyers that got themselves in hot water and they decided to use ChatGPT to write a brief, and it made up cases that did not exist. They submitted to the judge and the judge caught them, and they're in hot water. So ChatGPT, if it doesn't know the answer, it'll just make it up. So it's not always accurate. So I tell families, look, there's 800 videos on my YouTube channel that you can listen till your heart's content. And this is, you know, how things work in the real world. So I think that's important. So I do that. I do, you know, obviously I relaunched my podcast, which I think, you know, especially when we interview people like you, Keisha, gives them access to different resources that maybe they didn't have before. And
that's powerful.
Yeah. And look,
very powerful.
I may not be the right option for you. That's okay. If you're not, if we're not the right option, or we don't think we can help you, we're going to tell you. I can't help you, but I know somebody who might be able to.
Yes. And that's a great thing. Referrals and resources are a great thing. You know, that's 100% of our business. We don't advertise. We are 100% referral business. So,
Mark, I want to touch on 2 things that I heard you say.
Yep.
You said that everyone deserves to have access to the information for education. And then earlier you said you lay out a plan to show people. And I imagine doing this as long as you have been, there's a scenario, like you can run all the scenarios through your head and you can do that. So my question for you is, I would think that you have 2 types of people that come in dealing emotion wise, because we're human and human nature plays a lot into how we make decisions about ourselves and the people around us. So for me, I believe you probably have people that are really overly emotion because they're just at their wits' end and they just have no idea what to do next. And then you have the other side of the emotional coin where it's almost like they appear they're devoid of emotion because they're just so spent. It's just not there anymore. Their well is absolutely empty. So how does it affect both types of people when you lay out that plan? Like when you're formulating these plans that you're doing, and they have to be great because you have a lot of experience from what you've said. How do you, 1, prepare for that? Do you interview the families before so you kind of know which category they're going to fall into? And does that affect it? Or do you do it based off of my plan can cover both sides of those coins? And, you know, facts talk to people. Like you can't, you know, facts speak truth, right? There's no way around what it's saying. This is what happens. This is what's going to happen. So can you talk a little bit about that and how your approach is for that and how that's received from people?
Yeah, I mean,
great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So, you know, by the time people come to us, they're for the most part they're spent, and it might be because they've been unable to get their loved one into treatment, and they're sick and tired of trying to get their loved one into treatment, or their loved one has been into treatment repeatedly, and they say to us, treatment doesn't work. Or they might say, well, I've tried a Marchman Act. You know, either I went and tried to do it myself or I hired a lawyer, and the Marchman Act doesn't work. Well, what does that actually mean, that it doesn't work? When you tell me that treatment doesn't work, what does that mean? Right? So it's about finding out what's really been going on here, and analyzing it and saying, okay, whatever's gone wrong in the past went wrong. Let's take a fresh look at it, because we know when we do what we do and the program gets work, it does work. But I think that for a lot of people are fearful. Mm-hmm. Okay, you've got right, you've got, so there's sort of two, when I say fear, there's like sort of two categories of fear. And if I'm off track here, let me know, because I'm a lawyer. I can get off on a tangent really quick.
I love tangents, so you're
By
good.
the word, or I'd be making a fortune here. Right. So here's fear number one. Fear number one is they've been down this road before and nothing works. Treatment doesn't work. The legal system doesn't work. The Marchman Act doesn't work. And so their biggest fear is that if they try one more time, that it won't work, whatever it looks like. Then the other group of fear is they make the commitment, but their fear is that it will work.
Mm-hmm.
That their entire world is going to change. You see, they've been living in chaos for so long that that's their status quo. They don't know any different. And, we are hardwired as human beings, at least on a subconscious level, to equate change with danger. Mm-hmm. That's why change feels uncomfortable, right? It's like, you ever move house? It's such an uncomfortable feeling to move house. And you just moved from another state,
yes.
Right?
Chaos.
It's because it's chaos because we equate that change with danger. And for a lot of families, it's not that it won't work, it's that it will work. Mm-hmm. Now, where does that leave us? How do we cope with that? Right? How do we cope with the fact that our loved one is completely different? We're not used to that person. We're used to this person, the one who's causing all kinds of chaos in the family. And the answer to that is that while your loved one is working the program, the family has to work the program too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They got to do the work too, because if they don't know it, I'm going to tell you, they are traumatized. Mm-hmm. And they've become so numb,
conditioned.
They don't know it. They don't even realize it. And so I tell families this: while your loved one is in treatment, you have to work the program. And what I mean by that is a good treatment service provider will have a family program. And they will work with the families. And every once in a while, I get asked to come and talk to a group of families, which I'm obviously flattered to do. So you're dealing with two different types of fear. And I think once you can, say, look, this is how it sort of generically works, right? From 10,000 feet, because every case has unique facts. And at least until we get hired on the case, I can't get into all of the weeds. We get into the general idea of what's going on here. So I know a general idea. Is this a Marchman case? Is it a guardianship case? Is it both? Right? Part of it is figuring out, do we have enough evidence that we can actually win the case? Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm looking at it not just from a clinical perspective, but also from a legal perspective. What evidence do we have? Right? Sometimes families will call us and they say, I haven't seen him in 6 months. Well, how do you know they're using? I just know. I can tell when I can just tell. Or somebody else told me. Okay, yeah. Is that somebody else willing to come into court and testify? No, they don't want to get involved. Now I have an evidence problem, which I have to worry about because I'm still governed by rules of evidence, rules of procedure, and substantive law. So if I can't prove the case, then I'm not taking it. That's not fair to the family. And I don't like to lose either. Yeah. So I want to make sure that we can win the case. Okay, Mark, well, that's great. What else can you offer me? That's a great question. Well, maybe there's another option here. I happen to work with a couple of great clinicians, both of whom are world-class interventionists. Maybe we could use an intervention, a little more gentle, and then maybe we could reassess the legal option. But let's start from there and see what's available. Or let's go on an evidence-finding, mission. Let's make a point of getting the evidence so we can build a case, right? So there's lots of ways to sort of
Hey, this is Keisha. It's important that you leave your comments because we'd love to know about it. We'd also like for you to subscribe, like, share, and tag. See you next time.
Hi, this is Chrissy. Thanks so much for watching our episode today.
Yeah.